And joining me now for more is Derrick Crowe, political director of the Brave New Foundation. Thanks for coming on the show, Derrick. So the U.S. Department of Defense is the biggest polluter in the world. How is this able to happen?
Well, I mean, part of it is that the United States continually goes to military-heavy solutions across the globe. And when you're the world's largest consumer of oil products, for example, that just means pollution. And typically, you also have military contractors who are there to make a buck and don't really care about environmental regulations, or in a lot of cases, the safety of the troops they're supposedly serving. I mean, you had anything from water contamination in Camp Lejeune to the burn pits in Iraq and Afghanistan. I mean, it's a persistent problem, and it leads to about, I think as your report said, 750,000 tons of toxic waste produced every year.
And you just said, the worry isn't really too much about environmental regulation. This, as the U.S. tries to advise other countries on environmental policies, I mean, how can the U.S. do so when it has its own cleaning up to do?
Well, we really do have our own cleaning up to do here in the United States. And as your report said, the Congress, the current Congress, isn't really inclined to be environmentally friendly in the first place. But a lot of it has to do with simply the profit motive behind the companies that contract for the Pentagon. I mean, you've got these huge corporations that the CEOs are in the richest 0.01% of Americans who are really just interested in making a buck. And then you've got a Congress that's not particularly interested in environmental regulation right now. And when you put those two things together, what you get are people chasing the dollar and leaving a huge mess in their wake.
And as these messes are being made, a lot of them fatal and toxic, who is profiting from this?
Well, I mean, if you look at the top Pentagon contractors, it's very clear. It's companies like Lockheed Martin, Boeing, Northrop Grumman, Raytheon. These companies, if you check their statistics on the government misconduct database for government contractors, you'll see that many of them have these environmental infractions and settlements that they've had to pay to communities or to the military or the U.S. government. And really, it's just about profit for these companies. I mean, they claim to be very patriotic, but when it comes down to it, they're just after the dollar.
And the environment, it goes hand in hand with human health. Talk about the medical effects of defense pollution around the world.
Well, I mean, they're really pernicious. And the thing that people don't think about oftentimes is they portray this as being, anti-military when you're agitating for, the U.S. military to come out and really stick to these environmental regulations. It affects the troops. I mean, one just really easy example would be these burn pits that were being used to dispose of trash in Iraq and Afghanistan. And the toxic smoke coming out of that and the things it was releasing into the groundwater was poisoning the troops. And you've got the situation like Camp Lejeune or even our nuclear program at Hanford in Washington State. There's time after time when either we've tried to produce weapons with hazardous materials or simply tried to dispose of waste from huge deployments where we put the lives of the troops at risk.
And Derrick, now that the mess, I mean, it's already been made, why is it not a priority for the Pentagon to clean it up?
Well, the Pentagon's got other priorities, frankly, and a lot of it's said at the top. We have these huge deployments. There are these big ticket weapon items that cost a lot of money, and they squeeze out other things in the budget. So you've got, the profits of companies like Lockheed Martin and Boeing and Raytheon and Northrop Grumman. That really is forming the core of what's going to come out of our defense budget in the next couple of weeks. And so while we're spending all these monies on huge weapons programs that, by the way, oftentimes don't work, there's not room left in the budget that's dictated by Congress and the Pentagon for these kind of cleanups, and it's just frankly not enough of a priority. And if we set priorities that were more in line with actual human security, and that includes environmental health, we would make room in the budget for these kind of things, but you're just not seeing it right now.
And as the U.S. Plans to expand, there's this shift now to the Asia-Pacific region. I mean, do you expect more of this to continue, or more pollution, or do you expect them to maybe try to make this a priority to at least implement some environmentally friendly practices so this doesn't happen in the future as much?
Well, let's be hopeful, right? We should hope that they would make this a priority, especially after reports like this are drawing attention to it. But the simple fact is, when you've got a fossil fuel-based military moving in huge numbers around the globe like the American military is, there's going to be pollution. And when you've got these companies that are primarily interested in a profit motive, they're going to be trying to maximize their profits, and the lives and the health of the community in their path really kind of takes a back seat. So you've got to take the profit motive out of our military engagements, and you've just got to get leadership that has more of this as a priority.
And unfortunately, there isn't much talk about this cost of war, the environmental cost of war. Thank you so much, Derrick, for weighing in on this. That was Derrick Crowe, political director at the Brave New Foundation.